Hey everyone, George Christie here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to another edition of the Win Educational Webinar Series. Now today's webinar is sponsored by Oenodia and it's titled STARS, a solution for modern winemaking. As many of you in the winemaking community know, Oenodia is constantly pushing the envelope when it comes to coming up with innovative solutions to some of the challenges faced by the winemaking community. And the STARS system is certainly an incredible example of that. So you're going to enjoy today's session. We've got an incredible panel. Just sit back and enjoy. Now, one thing I want to encourage all of you in the audience to do is to take advantage of the chat feature. It's always our goal here at Win to make sure that our sessions are as interactive as possible. So our speakers, our moderator will all be in the room. They'll be taking those questions on in real time. So please take advantage of that. Once again, I want to thank Oenodia for their sponsorship. They're a great partner of ours. And I want to introduce our moderator for today. It's Damien Monnet. Damien is the Business Development Manager for Oenodia North America. Damien, how are you? It's good to see you again.
Hi, George. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to having me today. That's a real pleasure.
Now, listen, we very much appreciate your support and for sponsoring this webinar. And of course, I had the opportunity to take a look at the deck. I know that the audience is going to love it. You guys are doing some great things at Oenodia, and I'm just happy to be working with you guys on this project.
Yeah, that's nice to be also for us to have the opportunity to do that with you guys because it's a great technology to have the possibility to do that together. And I hope also that the audience will learn things and will appreciate the very good testimonials that we will have.
Well, before I jump out here, I just want to remind everyone in the audience to please take advantage of the chat feature, submit those questions. Damien and all of our speakers are going to be in the room taking those questions as they come in. Damien, I'm going to hand it off to you and let you go ahead and introduce your fabulous panel, and good luck with it.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, George. It's a great pleasure today to have the possibility to do the first Oenodia's webinar with you guys. And I'm pretty sure we will have a great session because we have a great panel with us. So yes, our first guest today will be Cameron Parry from Groth. Thank you, Cameron, to be here. You're the Director of Wine Growing at Groth. Can you tell us a little bit about your day-to-day operation?
Certainly, and it's a pleasure to be here. So as Director of Wine Growing here at Groth, I'm responsible for all the viticultural operations, all the wine production operations, and also facilities. It's a remarkable position to have as a winemaker. It gives me that total control from dirt to bottle, as I like to say. Allows me to really work on achieving our winemaking goals out in the vineyard.
Okay, yeah, you look like pretty busy. So thank you again for the time you give us today. Nice of you. Thank you. Our second guest will be Manveer Sandhu, Director of Winemaking at Riddle. Thank you, Manveer, to be here. Can you just also introduce yourself quickly?
Sure. Thank you for having me too. Yes, Director of Winemaker at Riddle. We are a sparkling house and a custom crush facility in Sonoma County. We produce sparkling wine with method champenois, as well as a lot of still wines for custom crush, as well as some of our own brands. We have a pretty good sized team here of 6 winemakers, and I lead that team and making sure that some of the day-to-day operations that they're responsible for are carried out, and work on new directives for winemaking going forward.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Thank you, Manveer. Thank you again to be here as well. And our last guest for the day, Ludovic Dervin. Thank you to be here, Ludovic. You're the owner and winemaker for the consulting company called the Essentialist Winemaker. You have a long career also behind you. So can you explain us exactly where you are right now?
Well, I completed my winemaking studies in Champagne, France, where I was born and raised. So I'm the other guy with a French accent. And my method champenois winemaking skills were refined during several vintages with the prestigious champagne houses, Charles and Piper Heidsieck, GH Mom, as well as 20 years of winemaking with California's Piper Sonoma and Mom Napa. And I have to say also that my search for expanding my wine education took me to faraway places such as South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, Greece. And prior to joining Mom Napa in 2002, I also polished a little bit my winemaking skills for still wines at world-renowned Russian River wineries, Hartford Court, Gary Farrell. So I ended up being one of a handful of wine world consultants with well-rounded winemaking experience with white, red, rosé, and sparkling wines. And since 2003, when I started to work with electrodialysis, I was involved with two separate investment projects of electrodialysis units in two different countries. And I'm very happy to join you today to share some insights with my experience on these projects.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure that the audience will appreciate your testimonial on that, and will understand all the different aspects you can focus on when you use the technology, and then when you have to consider an investment or not. And that will be great. That will be great. Thank you. So thank you both of you guys. It's a great pleasure to have you. And I would say let's start to introduce the technology, so that as quick as it's done, we can go back to you guys and have an interesting discussion. So yes, today we will talk about STARS and electrodialysis for a solution for modern winemaking. Before talking about it directly, I will present you a few words about Oenodia itself, and then I will introduce you with the technology. What is electrodialysis? How can it be used as a very fantastic tool for winemaking, and especially for tartaric stabilization and also pH management? Before talking after that with our guest and having their testimonial, I will introduce you quickly with the portfolio of STARS to show you that we have a lot of solutions available. So Oenodia, it's in fact a division of Oenodia based in Pertuis. Pertuis, it's a small city in south of France, and Oenodia is about something like 100 employees, and the turnover is about $400 million per year. Oenodia represents 25% of this turnover, and Oenodia is present in 25 countries. In the US here, we are present for more than 15 years now, and a few months ago, we just get in a brand new office, 8,000 square feet of very nice offices, where we have all the team here, especially dedicated to the winemaking industry. So we have the possibility to have our production of stacks, the maintenance of all the equipment we have in the North America, and also the team for mobile service activities and sales as well. As I said, Oenodia is present all over the world. Anywhere you can find vineyards, you can find Oenodia. We have in the wine industry 250 units already working and treating wine, which represent something like 1.3 billion bottle of wine stabilized every year. It represents something like 260 million gallons. If you want to understand what is electrodialysis, first you need to understand what is a dialysis. Here is on this scheme, you can see what it is. In fact, I represented in a bag a solution of whatever that you want to purify. And in fact, you can tell that from the beginning of the process and the end, you have a move from the inside of the bag to the water. So if you're able to use a specific bag permeable to the molecules you want to remove to purify your solution, you are able to obtain at the end of the day your product totally pure. So how do you do that? You use the water, and if you remove the water and you do it again, you keep removing from the inside of the bag what you want to get rid of. So if you do it again and again and again, and so on and so forth, you will have at some point a purified product inside the bag, but you can tell that it takes a lot of time, it's time consuming, and also you need a lot of water. So if we talk about electrodialysis now, in fact, it's exactly the same system, except that the driving force is not anymore the osmotic pressure, but the electricity. It means that you are able to purify your solution with this electricity and remove ions, positive ions or negative ions. And to do so, you need to select specific membranes. Some are permeable to the anions, and some are permeable to the cations. And also what is interesting is that you're collecting them in the same compartment. And in fact, if you do that, you are more or less in the same situation than previously with the bag. But if you're able to add a flow to this system, you are able to obtain a continuous purification of your solution, which is very interesting because you can save a lot of time. If we're talking about winemaking and electrodialysis, what are we really talking about? Here I represented more or less the different most important steps of the winemaking. And if we could focus more on the Tartaric stabilization, you can tell that it's very close to what we're talking about. In fact, Tartaric stabilization is about the ionic balance, the ionic balance of tartaric acid itself, neutral electrically, bitartrate, here the Ht minus or the T minus, the tartrate, but also the equilibrium with the cations, potassium, calcium, which can be very present in the juice and in the wine after the fermentation. And these ions, cations paired with tartaric acid can lead to potassium bitartrates and calcium tartrates salt, which can crystallize in your wine. Usually the tartaric stabilization is managed by cold stabilization. And cold stabilization, it's in fact a system to extract bitartrates and potassium, not really specifically, and to avoid any future crystallization. The problem with this technique is it's consuming in terms of time and in terms of energy. You need a lot of energy to chill your wine about 32 Fahrenheit. And also it can take some days or even several weeks to reach the stabilization. At the end of the day, when you see the bottom of the tank, you can also see that you have a lot of slurry inside of it, and it leads to important wine losses. You can lose more or less 1.5%. And also the thing is that it leads to a decrease in pH that you cannot predict and you cannot manage. When we are comparing this technique with electrodialysis, what is interesting is when you feed your stack with wine, you can make the potassium and the calcium move in one direction and the bitartrates and the tartrates in an opposite direction, meaning that you are able, when you adjust the flow rate, to stabilize your wine and to make exactly the amount of time the wine needs to see the membranes to be able to remove exactly the quantity of ions you need. On the other side, when you have stabilized your wine, you also have the production of brine, which contain some bitartrates and also some tartrates. And it's also true that at the beginning of the technology, or the origin of the technology in late 90s, the water consumption was an issue and was usually pointed out. But since this period of time, a lot of work has been done. And when we use a system of low pressure reverse osmosis, we are able to reduce the water consumption by at least 50% if we compare with what we were able to do before. In some cases, we are also able to divide by 4 the quantity of water that we consume. So it's very, very efficient. So to summarize, when we consider the tartaric stabilization using the conventional electrodialysis, you are able to do exactly the same thing as the cold stabilization. You are extracting bitartrates and potassium, but the difference is here you're working at the cellar temperature, which is much less traumatic for your wine. And you also allow the wine to be totally secure in terms of future crystallization. So in fact, when you use an electrodialysis technology, you have a 100% guarantee treatment. Obviously, as you understood, the technology is absolutely not a filtration, and you do that at cellar temperature, which is softer for your wine. There is no oxygen pickup because everything is done under CO2 atmosphere or even under nitrogen atmosphere if you want. So you respect a lot all the wine's flavors. And during your testing, you will see no difference between a cold stabilization or an electrodialysis stabilization. You will save also a lot of time, But the difference here is that you know in advance how long it will take. So you have a better planning for your day-to-day operation, but you can also better plan your bottling and all your tank management. Another important point in favor of the use of electrodialysis for tartaric stabilization is the fact that you can save a lot of energy. An independent study showed that you can save up to 96% of the energy that you are specifically using for the tartaric stabilization. So you can save a lot of money. But you can also save a lot of wine. And if you save a lot of wine, you can sell a lot of wine. So you can generate also more incomes. And that's very interesting for your ROI as well. Electrodialysis is also very interesting on the calcium salts. It is the only solution today available to be sure that you will improve the tartaric stabilization regarding the calcium salts. And another point which leads to this calcium stabilization or improvement of stabilization of your calcium salt is the fact that you can deal with the pH shift generated by the extraction of potassium and bitartrates from your wine. Because as you're removing some bitartrates and you're removing some tartrates, but at the same time you are decreasing the pH, you reduce the quantity of tartrates available in the wine for the calcium to precipitate later on. So in fact, you can manage your calcium salt concentration, and by managing your pH shift, you can again having another effect on your stability. So definitely you reduce a lot the risk of the tartaric stabilization, whatever the salt, potassium or calcium. But as we are talking about pH, and here is also why the technology is very interesting, is you can also not talk only about the side effect of the pH shift that you have due to the tartaric stabilization and the removal of potassium and bitartrates. You can also literally manage your pH or optimize your pH by using a specific technology, a specific kind of membranes with your electrodialysis. We use some bipolar membranes, and that's why we call this technology the bipolar electrodialysis. What is a bipolar membrane? So what is a bipolar membrane? A bipolar membrane is kind of the association of a cationic membrane and an anionic membrane, which can, in addition, dismute the water and generate some protons and some hydroxy. So if you want to acidify your wine, if you're able to associate some bipolar membranes to cationic membranes, you are able on one way to remove some potassium and to replace it by some protons which are from the wine. They are created just in situ. So in fact, you don't add anything. It's just already there. So if you know the pH that you want to target, you can apply the perfect flow rate and the perfect current to remove the exact quantity of potassium that you need to generate the acidification that you want. And it's a very easy to use technology because you can do the testing directly at the outlet of the stack. And when you do that, you know if you need to go a little bit further, or you know if you have been already a little bit further, a little bit too far. So you can go back. And in fact, you can adjust very, very easily the technique to acidify or to de-acidify exactly at the level that you want. Usually, you can manage your shift of pH from 0.05 to 0.5 according to where you start. So in fact, for the pH management, you don't need no acid, no base, nothing. You don't need tartaric acid, citric acid, malic acid, or calcium carbonate. You just need your wine and an electrical field. The pH shift is easy to manage. You can, as I said, manage a pH shift from 0.05 to 0.5. You can apply this technology at any moment as long as you can pass a filter at 20 micron. So you can apply that on must or just after your alcoholic fermentation, or you can also do that after or before, just before and just after the malolactic fermentation to manage your aging in barrel, for example, or just before the bottling, just to sweet spot, to identify the sweet spot of your wine. And due to that, you can reveal the full potential of your wine because, in fact, your impact is only on the pH. So you can bring back the freshness, you can reveal your fruit notes without any impact of the addition of tartaric acid, for example. You don't have the sourness of this tartaric acid. It's very easy to manage, and it's very easy to treat because you treat the entire volume of the tank, just like the Tartaric Stabilization. So it's very gentle for the wine. Obviously, if you're able to manage your pH, you're able also to manage your SO2 concentration, which allow you to manage your oxidation, and there is no early aging in your wine. Obviously, it's extremely simple as well because you don't have to make any calculation before to proceed your wine. Unlike when you use the tartaric acid or when you use resin, where you have to make a lot of calculation before. Obviously, due to that, you can also work on the color of your rosé or red wine, which is very important. Our partner in Europe is using that for more than 10 years in the Rosé de Provence, or also in the Bordeaux area. Some years it could represent 25% of his activity. So it's very important, especially in the climate where it's very warm, like south of France, south of Europe, Northern Africa. That's very, very important because it allows to manage the increase of potassium in the wine and the high pH that are the result of this concentration. So I'm very convinced that for California or Texas, for example, these kind of places where your vineyard is in a climate where it's very warm, this technology is very, very, very interesting. In addition, when you use this technology, you have seen that we collect some potash or some tartaric acid that you can use for cleaning, for example. And again, tartaric stabilization or pH management use a very, very low quantity of electricity. So if you consider this technology, you see that you have two possibilities and to work on two very important steps of the winemaking, the tartaric stabilization, but also the pH of your wine. And if you're already using some cross-flow filtration, for example, it means that you're already working with membranes. But in fact, you can, when you pair these two technologies, electrodialysis and the cross-flow filtration, you realize that you can have a very efficient, very modern, membrane-based winemaking, from the clarification and the pH management of the wine to the filtration for the tartaric stabilization just before the bottling. So for these three different very important steps of your winemaking, Oenodia is able to propose you three different solutions: STAR-STAB for stabilization with conventional ED and with no wine losses, or STAR-pH, which is able by using bipolar membranes to manage the pH without addition of any base or any acid. And if you want also to do some pairing with the cross-flow filtration used with the STAR-STAB, you can cross-flow and stabilize your wine in one pass, and that is the product, the technology STAR-XF. Here, I wanted to show you a few pictures of different equipment that are already in place in some facilities. Here on the left, you have a machine which is able to treat 3,200 gallons per hour of wine. And when on the right, it's 4,800 gallons per hour that you can treat. Obviously, we have also some smaller machine with different design of stacks. Here you have a smaller stack, which we call SV10. Here on the right, you have a machine which is able to treat 400 gallons per hour. So one stack like this one is able to treat 400 gallons per hour. But this machine can be also upgraded to 800 gallons per hour just by the addition of another stack just on the top of it. On the left, you have another design which can receive 3 or 4 stacks, leading to a capacity of treatment of 1,200 or 1,600 gallons per hour. On this picture, you have the pairing. You have STAR-XF, very interesting because you can tell on the left that you have your cross-flow filter, and on the right you have the skid for the stacks for stabilization. In the center, you have the process skid. And it's very interesting because when you do the pairing, one operator can use this interface and can manage directly both filter and the stabilization alone. Only one person for these two activities. The most interesting part here is the fact that the filter can be used alone. If you don't need it at the moment for the tartaric stabilization, you can use it for the filtration alone. And if you want to do the filtration paired with the ED, you can also do that. And again, you need only one person to manage these two important steps. So to sum up the different possibilities of stars that we have in terms of capacity, you can tell that in fact we can propose something treating 200 gallons per day up to something like 125,000 per day, which is a large possibility for any kind of winery. You can tell that also from the stars 1600, you can have the possibility to have a full automatic machine. And in fact, when we talk about full automatic machine, we mean that the CIPs can be managed directly by the software. So you don't need an operator to open and to close all the valves for the CIPs. Everything is automatic. All the valves are automatic and managed by the software. So in fact, you just have to press the button at the beginning of your treatment, and just when you come back, the wine has been treated. Most of the units are also expandable, meaning that you can improve your capacity of treatment as you are improving the capacity of your winery, for example. And when you do that, you don't have to increase the footprint of the machine in the winery, and that's very interesting. And for those who would not like to invest in a machine because they are not producing enough, for example, we also have 2 trailers and also 2 partners in British Columbia and in the Central Valley and Central Coast. We have this capacity of a mobile service unit. So we have a trailer with a ED 800 and another one with a ED 1600. What is interesting is the fact that the ED 800 is also equipped with a cross-flow, so we can deliver the cross-flow filtration paired with the stabilization, and also with the bipolar stacks, so we can provide provide the pH management mobile service unit treatment. Here is another picture of a trailer equipped with the cross-flow on the right and the stacks on the left. So here we are for the presentation. Thank you all for having listening to me, and also stick around because we will have the testimonial of our guests. I'm sure they will give you a lot of information. This year again, we will participate to Unified, obviously remotely. So don't hesitate to contact me directly or by phone or by email if you want to book some meetings for face-to-face discussion. I will be more than happy to do some with you guys. At the same time, if you want to discover the technology, we have our service mobile team who will be very happy to do it for you. So don't hesitate to visit our webpage, www.oenodia.us, and someone will be in touch with you very, very quickly. So now I think it's time to discuss with our guest. I'm very, very happy to have them today. So let's do that. So yeah, that was quickly what I wanted to tell you about the technology today, and I would like to jump directly on the testimonials of our guests, because they have probably more interesting things to say about it because of their day-to-day utilization of it. So I would like to start with you, Cameron. Tell us about the wine that you produce at Groth and how the stars can help you to reach exactly the wine that you're looking for.
Certainly, thank you, Damien. So here at Groth, we're using the STARS electrodialysis technique to replace traditional cold stabilization on our white wines. So we do produce a significant amount of Sauvignon Blanc and a small quantity of Chardonnay as well, and I'm using it on both of those varietals and one other small bottling of an estate Sauv Blanc Semillon blend as well.
Okay, I know you're someone who is, because we have discussed couple of times, and I know you're someone very focused on the pH and the acidity of your wines. So I know that's something you're very, very focused on. So can you tell us how stars can help you to reach your stability, but at the same time the good pH that you're looking for? And
Certainly. So for me, pH is critical in winemaking. I love wines that have that beautiful, bright, refreshing acidity. And part of what's so wonderful about STARS is that it replaces that traditional in-tank cold stabilization with cream of tartar and a month at 28 degrees with a single pass process that will not only allow the wine to be cold stable in bottle, but it allows us to go in and further sweet spot the pH. So we have to go a certain distance to get to that stable point, but you can always go further. And the operator of the mobile unit here in California, Cliff and I have been working together for about 10 years now, and he knows how detailed I am about this. And he'll bring me that stable sample and we'll taste it. And I'll go, all right, let's try one more step. And so he'll bump it another 100th of a pH point, and we'll keep doing that process. Typically we'll go one step too far and then say, okay, yeah, bring it back. And then that's it right there. And so we really do fine tune the pH, the ending pH. This is just prior to bottling is when we're doing this. And so it really has a tremendous impact on the mouthfeel of the wine. Even with those tiny movements of just 100th of a pH point, you can radically alter how that acidity feels in the palate.
Yeah, you have definitely understand the flexibility you can have with this tool, because it's extremely precise, and that's true that as you said, just hundreds of pH unit can make the difference sometimes. You mentioned Cliff and the fact that you're using mobile service activities, and usually what is the journey when you want to book a job, for example? How long in advance you have to do that?
As I mentioned, I've been working with Cliff for at least 10 years now. He knows what I like. We bottle typically the same time every year. So it's usually Cliff who reaches out to me saying, hey, Cam, you still looking at, mid-February for your Sauv Blanc run? It's like, yep, we are. So typically we're booking about 6 months ahead to ensure that we have access to the unit. But having been such a long-term client, we also have a little bit of a special standing in that sense as well, that Cliff's always looking out for us.
Mm-hmm. And when you introduced the stars, okay, I understood that you used it also previously before coming here at Groth, but how did you introduce this tool in your winemaking vision? Because obviously using this technology versus cold, you probably had to adjust a little bit your approach?
Sure. So I initially used the STARS electrodialysis when I was at Chateau Montelena. And up there, we would use it on the Chardonnay, which was bottled in August. So to do traditional cold stabilization, we'd be running our chillers in July during the hottest months of the year and using a lot of electricity. And so when STARS came along and became available here in Napa Valley, it was a very easy decision to take up there to try it and see if it worked, because it allowed us to keep the wine in the cave longer, wait to pull it out of barrel and put it into tank. We didn't have to run the chillers during the heat of July. We're able to make that single pass right before bottling. And so the integration here at Groth has been much the same. It allows me to keep the Sauvignon Blanc in barrel for about an extra month, which is that much longer sitting on its lees, getting just that little bit more creaminess from that yeast autolysis, as Ludo and Manveer, I'm sure, can attest to. That is a really important part in these low pH wines, is having something to balance that acidity. So by getting a little extra time in barrel, it's been a wonderful integration into our winemaking process. We get to wait just a little bit longer. Being single pass, there's not a ton of preparation, just needs to be nice and clean, whether that's through filtration or just really careful racking. That's the only thing that we require ahead of the STARS.
Yeah, it's what I find interesting in what you just said is the fact that it's not only about the stabilization of the pH, because in fact, as you said, just one pass can allow you finally to have almost a month of aging in barrel. So it's not only about stabilization; it's all of the winemaking which can be adjusted and at the same time the wine can have another path, another journey, and the profile can be adjusted, and not only with the stabilization and not seeing the cold, or not adding any tartaric acid or whatever to reach the pH that you're looking for. So that's very, very interesting, and thank you for sharing that with us, Cameron, today. Thank you. I don't have any other question for you, because I think you have explained us very well what you're doing and how you use the tool, and that's very nice. But please, if you have some comments when we will discuss with Manveer and Ludovic, don't hesitate to share and to launch the discussion with them, because I think it will be great to have you guys talking all together if there are some topic to talk about. Manveer, thank you again to be here. The same as Cameron, just to introduce about Rack and Riddle. What kind of wine do you do? How STARS and the electrodialysis could help you in your day-to-day operation?
Oh yeah, definitely, and thank you for having me on board for this seminar. It's very exciting to be able to talk about my experiences with this particular piece of equipment, and how our winery has benefited, and how our clients have benefited from using this equipment. So yeah, as mentioned earlier, Rack was a sparkling wine house and also a custom crush facility in Sonoma County. We haven't been around that long. We founded in 2007, and we started our beginnings in Hopland, and soon moved to Healdsburg in 2014, and processing up to 7,000 tons of fruit a year, which the bulk of that is sparkling grapes. We've had the Oenodia STARS ED800 for about 8 years now, and we started using the piece of equipment to supplement our traditional chilling and seeding with potassium bitartrate. But as we saw the success of the STARS unit, we quickly shifted our process into use that as a primary method for cold stabilization for our sparkling base wines, as well as still wines and for rosés and whites. I would say the biggest glaring difference between the two methods is the speed. Passing wine through the STARS unit, it delivers us instant cold stabilization compared to waiting potentially weeks or a month using the traditional cold stabilization method. So that's speed that we gain and working as a custom crush facility, with over 140 different clients, it gives us a lot more flexibility in processing, planning, organization in the cellar, the workload that those folks need to have on their plate on any given day. We can forecast out weeks ahead of time, where it's a little bit more difficult to do when you're relying on a method that could be a week long, or it could be 4 weeks long. So a lot more flexibility and planning is afforded to us because of this technology. Also would say that the stability for stabilization, the standard is higher on the ED. With the sparkling wines, we typically want to have them stable at a lower temperature. They, when they're enjoyed in ice buckets and right out of the refrigerators. So they're enjoyed at a lower temperature. So having a unit that will stabilize at -4 degrees Celsius, as opposed to us stabilizing at 0 degrees, and how we do on the traditional cold stabilization, affords us a more guarantee that this wine will be stable when it's enjoyed by our consumers. As mentioned, the efficiency is a huge factor for us. So being able to plan out with the cellar team schedule, the workflow, knowing ahead of time how long it takes to stabilize the wines helps with our overall flow. We have about 2 million gallons of tank storage here. So, and being custom crush, we have to make sure we're keeping these tanks optimally used and filled and emptied and filled again. So, as I said, the planning aspect is huge, knowing what to expect. We cross flow, cold stabilize, wines ready to bottle. It gives us that time to bring in wines closer to a bottling date. It allows us to work on blends closer to the bottling date. Also, as Cameron mentioned, allowing time on lees for longer. Keeping in barrels is great. We don't have the same capability of a lot more stainless, but having that lees contact time in the tank is also very important for us, and we do gain some of that autolysis needed. So allowing us to kind of work to the very end on these wines before we need to bottle. And then we also save on additives. We're not purchasing as much potassium bitartrate anymore. We still do stabilize traditionally for certain clients, but our overall usage of potassium bitartrate is a lot less. We can prevent potential oxidation of wines because we're not keeping them at low temperatures for long periods of time. There's several production and quality advantages of using this machine.
I noticed something like 3 or 4 very important points in what you said. You said the time, and I know that last year you invested in a tirage line. So I imagine also that this 2 pieces of equipment are very complementary, because at some point you need to have also some flow rate to be able to feed this line.
Yes, in addition to the tirage line that we upgraded last year, about a few years ago, we upgraded our still line too. So now we have 2 bottling lines that are running at a higher speed. We can bottle more volume, and for us to get the efficiency out of that, both lines, we have to be able to process our wines and have them ready at a faster rate too. So having this ability to run wine through our electrodialysis machine so that we can meet our schedules, production schedule and goals is very important.
Yeah, sure. And also you mentioned the fact that you have some customers to keep satisfied, and if you can treat your wine and stabilize your wine quicker, that's great. And as also a sparkling wine producer, the fact that you can work also on the calcium should be probably something very interesting for you.
Definitely. I think one piece of information that is really important is the education of how this machine works, and based on your presentation, you really kind of demystify the process, because it is very different than what we are traditionally used to seeing as winemakers. But traditional stabilization doesn't really take care of the calcium, and the calcium tartrate stability is a factor, not something that typically we may be seeing in California, but over the last few years, I have seen some calcium instability that is really hard to take care of using the traditional method. So having the electrolysis to also take care of those needs is an added piece of security that we can let our clients know that's built into this equipment. Like I said, the education of this technology is very important for our clientele, and once they understand and are able to witness with their own eyes the marvels of this machine, we kind of have them hooked for life, and that becomes a primary method for cold stabilization for all of our custom clients. I think that very first step is just the education, and once they see the results of it, it's pretty easy to go back to it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's exactly the point of the day, to introduce the technology to show that in fact it's not a black box where we don't know what happened inside. Everything is really mastered, and we know exactly what happened, for what reason, and why and when we can use it. So it's clear that that's thanks to you guys and this day of presentation. I hope that it will be less and less a mystery for your colleagues, winemakers here in California and in the US in general. Well, thank you, Manveer, for this sharing. That was very interesting to see how it helps you in your day-to-day operations. Ludovic, as you mentioned, you have also international experience from France, from Australia, from a little bit everywhere in the world, and you participate to different projects using semi-automatic unit, full automatic unit, Star Stab, Star XF, so the pairing between the crossflow and the stabilization. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with these different tools, how you could why you made the decision to use this technology, and what for example, what drives or what drove the stakeholder to move in this direction?
Yeah, there is a lot to say. I started experimenting with electrodialysis back in 2003. It was not even approved yet. We had to do a derogation from TTB to start our experimenting. And I eventually got involved with the purchase and installation of 2 different units in 2 different parts of the world, France and California. And based on my experience, I would say that probably the most critical step is probably the first step, which is the cost-benefit analysis. The cost-benefit analysis is something that is done as a collaborative process between the winery staff and the Oenodia team. And I have to honestly say that from my personal experience and judgment, it was a good process with the Oenodia team. And I highly recommend you involve as many decision makers as possible from your organization as early as possible. The GM, the CFO, the production and maintenance team, all the people who will be involved with that project, get them involved early on because it should be a team effort the whole time. That's a real key to success for me. Probably sounds like something that should go without saying, but it is critical that you fully own and understand your winemaking process before questioning whether or not ED is a good tool for you. I use ED as a shortcut because I have a funny story about that. When we started talking about electrodialysis with our CFO, who just moved to the company and was not in the winemaking knowledge. The project was called Ludo's ED, so it got a little, I had a little explanation to do why I needed $500,000 for an ED project. But electrodialysis is a disruptive technology. It will put some of your cellar staff out of their typical comfort zone. And I consider personally it's a very positive thing for any successful company, as long as the implementation process is well designed and managed. It is important that you take the time to properly analyze the specificities of your winemaking process in your own facilities. And on the checklist, start with the easy questions. What type of wine are you producing? Because for obvious reason, electrodialysis will benefit the most to sparkling wines, then to white and rosé wines, and then to red wines. And a small instability in red wine is easily accepted by consumers as part of a natural sediments. So your brand will survive potential issues. With whites and rosé, the general lack of wine education in the US will often lead wine consumers to think that there is some glass shards in their wine, which could lead to some potential brand image damage. But with sparkling wines, any salt precipitation is a dramatic event, as it leads to wine gushing, either during the disgorging process, leading to major product loss, or even worse, when the consumer opens the bottle and sprays the gushing wine all over his dinner table, all over his guests. Make some great video footage on Facebook and Instagram, but unfortunately you won't see that consumer again at your side. Or for sparkling wines, the consequences could be dramatic, and it's critical to have perfect stabilization, predictable, measurable stabilization. So then moving to the more tricky questions. Do you really know your water and energy consumption at each step of your winemaking process? Because if not, do a thorough audit of your facility. It is a well-known fact that refrigeration during cold stabilization is the major energy hog in the production process. So what are your filtration requirements? Next question. In all honesty, if you are an absolute anti-filtration person, electrodialysis is going to be a very complicated implementation because you need to have your wine properly prepared to go through electrodialysis. Another question, what is my oxygen management? Not so many people have audited their full process with oxygen ingress. And some adjustment might be necessary compared to traditional cold stability, where you traditionally give a lot of air to your wines. So is it a good thing, a bad thing? It all depends on your wine style. But the good thing about electrodialysis is that it's extremely oxygen-friendly process by the fact that you can go zero oxygen almost through the process. So it makes further adjustments very easy if they're necessary. but you need to know and own your process to know which adjustment you might need to do. You also need to think about your process flow. At what time of the year and for how long do you typically cold stabilize your wines? This is a great advantage that Cameron already talked about, and Manveer, because it will influence the energy requirements on your process and the true cost benefits of electrodialysis. You know, if you're in a very cold winter area where all you have to do is open your doors to chill your wines, it's completely different than like some experience I had where you're trying to cold stabilize some base sparkling wines in October when it's still 90 degrees outside. The demand on your refrigeration system, the cost of your frigories are completely different. This is why your cost benefits will completely be linked to your own specific facility and process.
Yeah, and even the water also that you can consume during the chilling system.
Yes, because that's next point. What kind of cooling system do you have at your facility? Evaporative cooling towers are complete water hogs. So, and few people know that. We measured it by putting a flow meter, a water flow meters on our evaporative cooling towers. And reducing refrigeration loads during the warm weather can significantly impact your water savings. You know, electrodialysis in the early days had mixed reputation for being high on water consumption. Well, you can actually today, with RO systems added to the electrolysis, balance or even be beneficiary with less water consumption. Again, it will completely depend on your specifics. So do that cost benefit analysis very thoroughly.
Yeah, it's very interesting you said that, because it's true that, as I said in the presentation, for a long period of time, the water consumption of electrolysis was showing like a big issue. But it's true that the fact that you can use a low pressure reverse osmosis system to reduce the water, and it has been a lot of work done on that, can change the equation, because if you consider the full amount of water that you use during the cold stabilization, it's true that it's not always what we could think at the first place, and it's very interesting to consider every source of water that you consume during your process.
Another consideration, a question to ask yourself is, what are your tank space constraints? The electrodialysis can allow you to stabilize and bottle some blends very early with more flexibility. With sparkling wine, for example, you could stabilize at a very early bottling and free up some tank space. Same thing with rosé blends or whites like Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Gris, and suddenly open up some very valuable tank space early in the season. That's a really big advantage. And you don't have to turn your refrigeration down, because really the key point is how cold do you need to get your glycol. And if you need to bring it down just to chill a few tanks, it's a huge energy consumption for just a few tanks, when the electrodialysis will work at regular storage temperature. It actually works better at 55 or 60 degrees.
What you're saying just ring a bell to me, because I have the feeling that when you're giving us all this information, for me it's very interesting, because it sounds like you're talking for a winery which is already implemented and would like to think about, oh, could I use the technology or not? But I think what you're just saying is also extremely interesting when you're building a new winery, a new facility, for example. What would you recommend in this kind of specific case?
Well, this is one thing you need to really think about. Are you implementing your electrodialysis with an existing facility as a straight replacement to traditional cold stabilization? Or is it part of a facility expansion plan? Or even part of a new facility project altogether? The cost benefit and the return on investment can be significantly boosted with new facility projects and expansions. If you integrate electrodialysis as your main Tartaric stabilization process, you suddenly significantly lower the load requirement on your refrigeration system. And you can go with a smaller refrigeration unit for the entire facility. save a lot of money that way. You can consider different and cheaper tank jacketing coverage. You can also probably save on a few tanks normally required for the cold stabilization process. Your minimum refrigeration temperature requirements go from 26 Fahrenheit for traditional cold stability to only 45 Fahrenheit as your lowest temperature for the short period of time of juice settling and cold maceration.
A lot of frigories.
If you consider designing and building a new facility or expanding an existing structure, you should definitely look into electrodialysis cost benefits.
And we didn't talk about that too much during this discussion, guys. But have you all of you being able to measure the wine savings that you made by changing from the cold stab to the STARS unit?
I haven't directly looked at that in a number of years, but initially when I did that first work up at Chateau Montelena, we certainly did. And I don't remember offhand what those numbers were, but there is certainly a significant savings of the product itself that is not being lost in the tartrate of these.
Yeah, in the slurry.
Yeah, for us, it's been a little more difficult to measure too, as we're making wines for ourselves, but also custom. As a custom crush winery, we're making wines for other clients too. But one thing I can attest to is the growth in our bottling capacity the year after year. I mean, we're bottling about 1.7 million cases of wine between sparkling and still, and I don't think that would have been possible without having been able to process these wines quickly and efficiently through the cellar.
I imagine for your customers, that's also an added value because they give you a certain amount of grape or wine and they can have more at the end.
Definitely. Yeah, the recovery, as mentioned earlier too, less loss on lees, racking off of testing by tartrate. And then also at the same time, once you're going through the filter itself, the loss is really at the initial step. But as you move more volume through the ED, that percentage loss grows smaller.
Was it the same case was the same thing for you, Ludovic, in your different experiences?
I will say again, it depends on how efficient your initial process is, and it really varies from winery to winery. But I think I can give you probably a range that's say 0.5% to 1.5% in a bad case scenario. But you again have to look and know your process, know already how much you lose. And the best way to do this is to start doing experimentations with the mobile services.
Yeah, that's a good path. First, a demonstration of the technology with the mobile service and a few treatment just to confirm, and usually, that gives you good numbers and good idea where you're going. Just another question for you, Ludovic, because you have also been involved in Tartaric Stabilization process. I imagine it was first the stab, and then the second project was with the cross-flow included and paired with it. So how did you decided and to also do your filtration in one pass?
It was completely driven by the different realities at the different places. So I did work with both a semi-automated electrodialysis and a fully automated electrodialysis cross-flow combo. I honestly could not tell you which one is better because the decisions were made for different reasons. And it will completely depend on the specificity of your own winemaking process and production flow. I like to sleep well at night, and I have to say that the fully automated cross-flow star combo was fantastic. The thing can work by itself almost 24 hours a day. You just have to be there during the setup and breakdown times. And the fact to have remote control with the Oenodia team, you can troubleshoot and maintenance from a distance. Now you have to, in your cost-benefit analysis, to see if it's something that you will really benefit or not. If you have a fully automated system, it can work 24 hours a day, pretty much without intervention. So you can actually size a smaller unit and make it work longer. Now you really have to just put the numbers at your facility and decide what is the best. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer.
Okay. Well, thank you, the three of you, very, very much. It was a great pleasure to have this possibility to talk with you and to have your testimonial. I'm doing that not for me, it's for you who are listening today. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure for me to have you. And again, everybody, don't hesitate to ask the question, because we are here today to answer you in the chat log. So don't hesitate. And even if it's not right away, we can also answer the questions later on and be in touch with you guys. So I think we have reached the time for today. So thank you guys again, and I hope I will see you very soon after the COVID situation.
Damien, that was a great job. Thank you to all your panelists. I thought it was a super interesting discussion. I want to thank our audience for spending some time with us today. Of course, I want to thank Oenodia for all your support. And I look forward to doing another one of these educational seminars soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.